This morning, we're not going to be back in Joshua, but we're going to go to the book of Proverbs. Just going to kind of be all over Proverbs. But I want to talk to you about the foolish man and his conflicts. The foolish man and his conflicts. And by the way, we want to take up a love offering for Brother Ken's trip to Guyana, and we'll do that Wednesday night, and that'll give you time the next several days to pray about what the Lord would have you do and help out. And I think that's a great opportunity to go there and speak in the prison system there in Guyana. And it seems like the Lord's opened that door for him. And that's a rough area. I'm telling you, it's tough there. But Brother Ken feels like God wants him to do that, and so we're thankful for that. So just be praying about what the Lord would have you do with that. All right. The foolish man and his conflicts. It all began over a pig. In 1878, Randolph McCoy accused Floyd Hatfield of stealing one of his hogs. Randolph was the patriarch of the McCoys who lived on the Kentucky side of the Tug Fork, a tributary of the Big Sandy River. William Anderson Hatfield, called Devil Anse, that sounds like a tough guy, doesn't it? Devil Anse, was the patriarch of the Hatfields who lived on the other side of Tug Fork in West Virginia. Now, Brother Payne said he grew up with some of the Hatfields and McCoys, of course, of a different generation there in West Virginia. Floyd Hatfield, who was a cousin of Devil Anse, was to stand trial for his supposed swine stealing in McCoy territory. But the presiding judge was a Hatfield. To make matters more confusing, the case rested on the testimony of one Bill Statton, who was a McCoy relative married to a Hatfield. Boy, that was a mess. And when Statton testified in favor of Floyd Hatfield, so he was let go. The McCoys were furious. Sometime later, they killed Statton. Though the McCoys themselves were acquitted, it was said that they were simply killing in self-defense. The story actually maybe can be traced back even earlier to 1865. All of the Hatfields and McCoys fought on the side of the Confederacy except for one of the Hatfields, who in returning in 1865, he had fought with the Union, was killed by a band of raiders. But most historians now think it actually began with the pig. Between 1880 and 1891, the feud claimed the lives of more than a dozen members of the two families, including a bloody New Year's Eve massacre in 1888. At one point, the feud between these two families was so severe that the governors of Kentucky and West Virginia threatened to invade each other's states. After the massacre, a bounty hunter rounded up 9 members of the Hatfield posse, and he sent them to jail. And then a trial began against the Hatfields and those who were in their circle in 1889. And it went through a number of legal arrangements. Eventually, it went to the Supreme Court. In the end, 8 of the Hatfields and their supporters were sentenced to life in prison, and one was publicly executed, even though public executions were supposed to have been outlawed. In 1914, Randolph McCoy died. He was the patriarch at the age of 88. Haunted by the death of his children in this feud, Devil Anse Hatfield died in 1921 at the age of 81. Amazingly, Hatfield, who had been a skeptic of religion, converted to Christianity later in life and was baptized when he was 73. So there's hope for everyone, right? For the last 130 years, at least in this country, if you say those words, Hatfields and McCoys, it is shorthand for feuding, for misdirected family honor, for violent retaliation, for unnecessarily quarreling with one another. We hear Hatfields and McCoys. I think there's a country and western song called Hatfield and McCoys, or maybe is that Waylon Jennings sings that? And Willie? I know most of y'all know Willie. But I don't know if you know Waylon. But anyways, and I think there was a mini-series. I haven't seen it, so I'm not commending it to you. So you'll go home and look that up and say, Pastor Rocky said to watch this mini-series. I did not say that. I don't even know if it's appropriate or not. But the whole thing was about never forgive, never forget. And that's appropriate for the story, right? But not appropriate for you. Sadly, however, that could be the tagline for some people. Even some people in the church. Never forgive, never forget. That's something, isn't it? The reasons for the feud are tangled and complex, but they provide a real historical example and warning for the folly that Proverbs describes. We are speaking this morning about conflict. Are you the foolish person that causes conflict? Or are you the wise person that avoids unnecessary conflict? Do you tend to make a situation worse? Or do you usually make a potential bad situation better? Are most of your relationships marked with difficulty and pain? It could be that you live amongst nothing but very difficult people. Or you may want to consider the common relationship in all of your difficult relationships is you. Or do you find it fairly easy to get along with most people? With that said, you can be sure some conflict in life is unavoidable. Jesus' life was filled with conflicts. We have honest disagreements. We have people who don't like what we stand for. There are people in need of correction and rebuke. None of us, if we go through life and we never have a single disagreement, you could probably say that we're just spineless. And yet, when you have a conflict, do you make it more intense? Some of us have conflicts, and we know how to make them longer, worse, more drawn out. I mean, they just go on and on and on. While others know how to make them shorter, more avoidable, the foolish person makes a sort of bad situation terrible. He makes little conflicts much longer. He causes conflicts that didn't need to be there in the first place, where the wise person in Proverbs makes potentially bad situations manageable. Long conflicts shorter, and he prevents many quarrels that did not have to see the light of day. And thank God for those kind of people. Well, let's start by looking at the fool, the foolish man. Now, as we go through Proverbs, it's different than what we normally do here at going through a book of the Bible. Normally we do a few verses at a time or a chapter at a time. But the very nature of Proverbs, and you know this if you've read it many times, doesn't lend itself to doing a chunk of verses at a time like they're all going to be in succinct. I don't think that's possible. But rather jumping around with a theme. So think of some of these verses. You can look them up or write them down, or you can just look at me or look to the ground and look around. That rhymes, doesn't it? A foolish man, first of all, is hot-tempered. Proverbs 15:18. A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. Proverbs 29:22. An angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. Are you the sort of person that has a big bomb with a very short fuse? Proverbs puts it strikingly. An angry man stirreth up strife. and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. You know, we've all seen these sort of people enter the room. As parents, we try to put them out with our children. The person who comes and immediately with their question, with their comment, how many times as a parent have I had to say, stop stirring up strife? And someone will respond, but I'm only saying what's true. But don't say it. You're stirring up strife. You say, where are you going with all this today? Just hang with me. Maybe you're getting an off Sunday. You never stir up strife, and today's your off week. Are you the sort of person if you are that sort of person, but you could pray this week and say, Lord, if I am this sort of person who stirs up strife, and I don't really know that I'm doing this, would you tell me and give me the humility to hear it? Some people have been so blunt so long, they don't even see themselves anymore. Are you the sort of person that everyone is walking on tiptoes around you? We all know people like that. You just cringe when you get around them because you're afraid you're going to say something wrong. And you have to bear their wrath. And they cannot not correct you. They have to correct you. And they correct you very poorly. I mean, everything is personal. You never receive constructive criticism. Everything comes to you as a great affront and attack. On the other hand, are you the sort of person who enters into a situation and mixes in whatever lethal potion is there and mix in your personality and just makes it combustible? The foolish man is hot-tempered. Well, here's the second quality of a foolish man when it comes to conflict. A foolish man speaks dishonestly. Proverbs 16:28, a froward man, that is a dishonest man, soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. No matter how hard we try, disagreements sometimes can't be avoided. I mean, people just see things differently. But one very effective way to stir up strife, it's those donuts, is to shade the truth ever so slightly. And let's be honest, most of us don't know when we're doing this. You know, few of us go into a situation and think, I'm going to lie today to this. I'm going to speak what's not true. But what do we do so instinctively? We all know how to tell a story. I mean, make ourselves a little bit more heroic. Make the other person look a little worse. It isn't that we've said anything absolutely incorrect, but we share, this is what we do, we share the 3 worst things that they said in the course of a month. And we share the 4 best things that we've done in the course of a month. And as we share the story, it generates a lot of sympathy for us. We may not even realize we're doing it. We exaggerate. We retell the story selectively, and we impute motives. There have been times with certain people that I know that have a tendency to exaggerate. I said, time out, man, time out. Is this exactly what they said? That they hate your guts? Well, no, they didn't say that. But that's basically what they said. Well, why don't you tell me exactly what they said instead of basically how you interpreted what they said? A froward man, a dishonest man, spreads strife. Third, a fool's lips enter into contention. Proverbs 18:6. I wonder if any of us have resembled this remark. A fool's lips enter into contention. That is, they walk right into a fight, and his mouth calleth for strokes. Or you could say he's asking for a beating. As the old saying goes, people may presume that you are ignorant. And some of us should keep our mouths closed lest we remove all doubt. What do foolish lips look like? They speak quickly. We never try to understand the situation. We don't sit on that email or that Facebook post for a day or two or even 5 minutes sometimes. We speak quickly. We have no interest in building a bond or trust. We speak too much. Sometimes we tell our kids inside voices. Sometimes you need to tell yourself inside thoughts. It seems in the age of the internet, is it okay to have a thought without posting it? Listen, my friends, you don't need to constantly download everything that you think about everything. Like everybody wants to hear that or read that. We speak too much. We speak carelessly. Listen, everyone you encounter is both a sinner and a sufferer. Now, for sure, everyone you encounter is a sinner. So they will all have occasion at different times to be corrected. Just like you will be corrected, I stand in need of correction. But some of us forget that, don't we? And with that said, some of us only sympathize, we never correct. But others are on the other side of the equation. We know people are sinners. We forget that at the same time they're all sufferers, especially the longer that we live. Everyone walks with a limp. Maybe not a physical one, but you know, from the angel that touches the socket of Israel, and for the rest of his life, there's a limp. We all live long enough and we walk with a limp. There's hurt, there's betrayal, there's death, there's a miscarriage, there's a dream that never was fulfilled. Are you ever sympathetic to the feelings of others? Sensitive to what they may be thinking. You know, when looking at serial killers, what's the one thing they have in common? They lack the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. A total lack of empathy. And you said, man, my wife or husband's a serial killer. But no ability to put themselves in someone else's shoes. No ability to think how actions may affect others. And you don't have to be a serial killer to have the same sort of flaw. And so we speak carelessly. We speak bluntly. And you hear people say all the time, well, hey, man, I'm just a straight shooter, dude. What comes out of this lips here, baby, it's straight. It's rigid and right, up front and blunt. And that's why when I see you coming, I go the other direction. You know, God's got straight shooters. But the truth is, you don't always have to shoot. Some people think because they can shoot, they always got to shoot. Everybody's a target for them. And we refuse to soften. We never qualify anything. We never add the other side into the equation. We never ease into things. We never say, well, I know that you're trying. We never give any ground whatsoever. I have found in my marriage, at least where admittedly most of the conflicts are my fault, and they have been through the years, that inevitably, if one of us will take a half a step toward the other person, even if we're still hurt, even if we still think that they're to blame, if we would just take a half a step to acknowledge and say, I know why you may have thought that. Or, I know that I could have said that better. Just a half step towards the other person means they can take a half step toward us and continue to meet each other. A foolish man's lips walk right into a fight. A foolish man, fourth, is full of greed. Proverbs 28:25. He that is of a proud heart stirreth up strife, but he that putteth his trust in the Lord shall be made fat. Listen, a love of money leads people to cheat, to lie, to ignore the feelings of others, to ignore relationships in your life. You didn't wake up and decide that you wanted to fight with your wife, be at odds with your children, but it happened in such a subtle way over time. As you kept chasing and chasing that buck and had another trip and another trip and yet another trip and long periods of stay from home. And you need to do one more thing for the office, and pretty soon you're strangers passing in the night. Isn't that a song? Jack would know, and Joe would surely know. Maybe that's a Frank Sinatra song. That's for a lot of y'all's time. My mother-in-law knows all those songs. I'm in trouble again. She's going to quit coming to church if I keep doing that. Sorry about that, mother-in-law. Or you step over people. Or worse, you step on people. And you say, well, the ends justify the means. And so when your search for success and your search for more leads to conflict, to fighting. A foolish man is full of greed. Number 5, a fool whispers. Proverbs 26:20. Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out, so where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. Listen, whenever in a church there is quarreling, and I'm talking about long-standing, not just hey, we had a disagreement and we worked it out, but long-standing streams of infighting. You can almost be certain that there is whispering. Secrets are the lighter fluid of conflict. secrets are the lighter fluid of conflict. As a general rule of thumb, if you have to share a secret, you probably don't have to share a secret. That's why I tell people all the time, when people talk to me about things, I said, look, you don't need to tell anybody else that. Because number one, when you tell some people some things that they don't understand and their minds can't handle, they're going to go dump it. They're going to tell the next person they see. And the story gets bigger and badder and broader. Be careful what you tell. Tell the Lord. I'm not talking about if you went out and murdered someone or done some grievous sin against someone. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about in general terms. All right? So don't make this too broad, all right? And put me in that kind of box. But if you want to talk about others, get this, gossip good things about them. Gossip good things about them. Let it be that people hear through the grapevine of what other friends or family members were saying to build them up. And he said, man, I didn't know that. Just like when you hear something you didn't know that's bad, I didn't know that. Rather than to hear secondhand what you really thought about them. And this is tricky in itself. We know what real life is like. We know even in a church, pastors, leaders have to talk sometimes about difficult situations and people. And you know, even in your own life, a husband and wife may have to talk about a child. Or you may very genuinely consult with a friend or a few trusted people and to say, would you help me with this situation? We know we can't always keep everything to ourselves. And yet, let's be honest. To know the tendency in our own hearts, there is almost no faster way to make a friend than to make a common enemy. A supposed friend. And we can feel that, we can sense that. You want to make an instant connection with someone? You want to feel a bond? Share a mutual sense of disgust or reproach for someone else. Or a secret that passes between you. A froward man, a dishonest man, soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. They learn of your whispering, and you ruin a friendship. Oh, you don't mean to, but it's hard. Isn't it hard when someone, especially at first impression, gives you their negative thoughts out of their head and their hearts? And then every time you come across that person, you cannot help but think what she said about them, and remember what they said about them. And you think, man, maybe she really isn't trustworthy. And it colors your whole idea of what that person is about. A fool whispers. Number 6, a fool loves the wrong things. Proverbs 17:19. He that loveth transgression, that loveth strife. And he that exalteth his gate or his door seeketh destruction. What does that mean? He that exalteth his gate, or he who makes his door high. I mean, I like 9-foot doors. I like tall doors. I like high ceilings. It gives space. No, that's not what he's talking about here. This isn't a statement about architecture so much as it is about the reflection of our hearts. Don't you think it's strange that any should love strife? And yet some, like trout, love to swim against the stream. Like salamanders, they live in a fire of contention. And they hold it as a goodly thing to differ from others. They are people that delight in war. Psalms 127, like David's enemies, I am for peace, saith he, and that was David's motto. But when I speak, they are for war. And the verse tells us that the ultimate outcome of this life is destruction. Some of the commentators said about this verse that in the Middle East, they only built their doors 3 foot tall or around 3 to 4 foot because the Arabs would ride their horses inside people's homes if they had tall doors. So they started building all their homes with small doors to get in and out of. So it's like you're inviting trouble, this contentious spirit. Proverbs 26:21, as coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. Well, there could be much more said about that, but let's move on. What about the wise man? Those 6 things that we mentioned are characteristics of the foolish man, but how does the wise person reduce tension, avoid conflicts? Consider a few points. First, he quits conflict before it starts. And he said, man, why in the world are you talking about all this? Because I hear little rumblings here and there. This one's mad at this one, and we've got this going on, and whispering and secrets. And before long, it can begin to tear away at a church. You have to nip it in the bud. Things you think were over a long time ago, they seem to just keep resonating. Because people they just absolutely will not let go of anything. They're like the Hatfield and McCoys. But the wise man, he quits conflict before it starts. Proverbs 17:14, the beginning of strife as when one letteth out water, therefore leave off contention before it be meddled with. In other words, just don't do it. Quit. Proverbs 23, it is an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. If only the Hatfields and McCoys might have meditated on that verse, thinking that it was their family honor. Here it says, you want to be honorable? Listen, you don't right every wrong. You don't challenge everyone to a duel when they offend you. It is an honor to cease from strife. So don't make the accusation. Don't let the comment fly. Don't put a crack in the dam. Just walk away. Even though our culture says you lose your honor if you walk away from a fight. They'll disrespect you, man. And you got to keep that respect, brother. They'll disrespect your whole family, dude. But Proverbs says the most honorable thing to do in some situations is just leave off contention before it be meddled with. Don't meddle. Proverbs 26:17. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belongeth not to him. is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. And that's not a good idea. I've learned this the hard way as associate pastor in pastoral ministry. Early in the ministry, I think from good motivation but poor effect, I would sometimes insert myself into situations where I didn't need to be, where I wasn't asked for, or it wasn't my responsibility. And sometimes, even as a pastor, I've been asked to be inserted into quarrels. And now I know better on occasion to say, nope, nope, no, no. It's between you two, and you need to figure that out, and you need to show forbearance toward one another. Some people think they're the only ones that's ever had a problem. If you live long enough, you're always going to have in life a problem that you've got to deal with. But don't be looking for a dog to grab by the ears. It's a bad, really bad idea, especially if it's a bulldog. But the wise man, he quits conflict before it starts. Number two, the wise person looks to avoid offense. Proverbs 18:19, a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city, and their contentions are like the bars of a castle. It's true that we live in a very sensitive age. We can be obsessed with the smallest, ittiest, bittiest slights. Just a look. Did you see that? They looked at me that way. And then you tell the 3 bad things that they did and the 4 good things that you did. And you get sympathy. I mean, just the tiniest grievances. And we can't always help it. When people take offense at things that should have just been nothing. And yet, with that said, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful. Doesn't mean that we should take delight in offending other people. Whether they are overly sensitive or not. Isn't part of loving our neighbor as ourselves is to think how we would want to be treated? Even if you think they're the weaker brother, even if you think they're exaggerating, even if you think they should have moved on, we want to love them as much as we would want to be loved. And so we are sensitive, realizing that when a brother's offended, he can become as an iron bars. They're hard to be won. I've experienced this in my own life, offending a brother. Not my brother Randy, but another brother. Brother was offended, and after years of work, finally. Do you offend in some ways? Offense City is easier to be won than that offended brother. Third, the wise person covers a multitude of sins with love. Proverbs 10:12, hatred stirreth up strifes, but love covereth all sins. Then in Proverbs 19:11, the discretion of a man deferreth his anger, and it is his glory to pass over a transgression. Or you could even say good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. Listen, how rarely in describing someone's glory do we make mention of that characteristic? We might speak of their intellect, their impressive wealth, their power, their influence, their beauty, their ability in athletics and artistry and all those things. But how often do we say, you know what made him or her so appealing to me? They knew how to overlook an offense. This morning, make a commitment in your heart to overlook the small stuff. Make a commitment in your heart to overlook the small stuff. I don't mean when people break the law. I don't mean when relationships are destroyed. I'm saying the small stuff. And will you make it your position as a Christian to give people the benefit of the doubt and not to assume the worst? I decided years ago in ministry, and sure I fail at this, but decided it would serve me better to assume that people like me rather than to be suspicious all the time. Monday morning is a horrible time for most pastors. As you lay in bed Sunday night, thinking, what did they mean by that? What was that look? What was that? And you can become suspicious. So that means I may get to heaven and find a whole lot of people, they never did really like you at all. Really? Well, now we're in heaven, it doesn't even matter, does it? I just figured that's better than going through life constantly suspicious. That's a miserable way to live life. Suspicious. Isn't that a song too, Suspicious Mind? Y'all need to stop sending me these vibes about songs. It's not good. Somebody's out there doing it. I don't know who it is, but you're doing it. I mean, what do they think? What do they know? What do they probably mean by that? And I don't know the way they looked at me, and I haven't heard anything from them lately. So I might be blissfully ignorant, but at least there's some bliss in it. Just to live life without all these suspicions. Honest to goodness, I rarely do that anymore. In the times when I do is when I haven't been really fervent in prayer and haven't been in the Word of God like I should. But most of the time, I don't even pay any attention. I said, man, they're just maybe having a bad day or something, and let it go. But I'd rather get to heaven and figure out that I was just a little bit naive than figuring out I was just a whole lot cynical. In other words, just give people the benefit of the doubt. You have slip-ups, you have bad days, but according to this scripture, it's a glory to overlook offenses. It's in your discretion to do that. Fourth, the wise person avoids quarrelsome people. This may sound a little harsh, but this is the testimony of both the Old and New Testament. Proverbs 6:19 says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, and it's quite a list. These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him, a proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift into running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. The Lord hates those things. Proverbs 22:10, cast out the scorn, and contention shall go out. Yea, strife and reproach shall cease. 2 Timothy 3:5 says to avoid such people. Romans 16:17 again, to avoid divisive people. And that doesn't mean the first time someone upsets you that you disown them. No, contentious, habitually, undeniably divisive people. You don't pay attention to their posts on Facebook. You don't get into Twitter fights with them. And I only know a few. I know there's so many outlets today in digital media. I don't know all of them. I'm sure the young people do, and they hide them from their parents. Accounts on media that they have, which you shouldn't do. But you don't give these kind of people a platform. Sometimes you ask, what in the world's wrong with him or her? They've been on social media and somebody said something or done something. It changes their whole attitude about things. People they don't even know. Don't give those people a platform in your life. And you don't have to return their calls or their emails. You avoid quarrelsome people. I have a list of people on Facebook. I try to read their posts. I try to read. And I said, man, I do not need this in my life. And so I don't unfriend them. What do you do? What do you do that when you just unfollow? There you go. Y'all know the word. Just unfollow. I have people ask me quite often, did you unfollow me or unfriend me? I said, no, I didn't unfriend you. I thought about unfollowing you. So which are you when it comes to conflict? Are you the wise person or are you the foolish? How do you handle situations of increasing escalation? A husband and wife can't decide how to handle their daughter's disobedient behavior. What started out as an honest disagreement between mom and dad, now they started to talk to their friends about it. And now they're talking to each other less and less. And their friends wonder, how in the world do they get into this mess? Or a builder from the church feels another member of the church has not paid them the agreed upon price. And the other man has a contract that says otherwise, and the two members can now barely sit in the same sanctuary together. Our daughter is caught lying to her parents about where she was on Friday night, and so she covers up that lie with another lie, and her parents are furious, and the whole house is in crisis mode. Our member voices his opinion on everything. He never seems to agree with anyone. One of his big mottos or hers is, I never agreed with them about everything. That says a whole lot to me when I hear people say that about their life. And they wonder why they're so critical. They wonder why their group of friends has dwindled down to just a few. Or a good friend whom you've known for years is having a terrible day and she blurts out something very negative and sharp towards you. And you now assume that your friendship has all been a sham and she wants nothing to do with you. And you wonder what went wrong. And so what you do, you just figure out that you won't talk to her. Or a longtime friend sees your success and is jealous. And now he blows up inside anytime he hears of your good fortune. And you can see it in his countenance. It puts a strain on your relationship. and you begin to grow distant. This happens a lot in independent Baptist churches. A family in the church is adamant about the way that family devotion should be done at home. And theirs is the only way. And they insist that anything less is displeasing to God. And soon families in the church start dividing over this issue. Are you the sort of person that makes conflicts worse? Or if I drop you into a situation that's tense, does it get better? Are you a quarrelsome person? Quarrels, listen, don't just happen. They happen because people happen. Again, yes, there are disagreements that are bound to happen. That's why Romans 12 has a key verse where it says in Romans 12:18, if it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Sometimes we do all we can to live at peace with people, and they don't want to live at peace with us. We're going to have an ordination service for GT sometimes this summer, and perhaps some deacons. But listen, we want to go down to Brother Vaughn's. He wants to ordain Audie, and so we thought on a Sunday evening it'd be a good time. I know it's a long drive down there, but I don't know when else we could do it. So we're just trying to figure out a time to do that. But one of the things that qualifies you for that there are to be men of peace, not quarrelsome. It's one of the requirements. Well, what does a quarrelsome person look like? During the Great Awakening, Jonathan Edwards was the great theologian of revival. And he tried to describe what revival looked like, and he called them the distinguishing marks of a quarrelsome person. So this morning, instead of you might be a redneck but instead of a redneck, we want to insert Billy Bible, which is nothing but a modern-day Pharisee. You might be a Billy Bible or you might be a quarrelsome person if they're not as funny, but maybe more edifying and a lot more scriptural, right? Number one, you might be a Billy Bible if you defend every conviction with the same degree of intensity. You've never met a hill you don't want to die on. Number two, you might be a Billy Bible if you're quick to speak and slow to listen. You rarely ask questions, and when you do, it is to set something up so that you can continue prosecuting your case. You're not looking to learn, you're looking to defend, dominate, destroy. No genuinely inquisitive questions to help you understand the other person. Only a chain of condemning thoughts where you're the judge and the jury and you already have the verdict. 3, you might be a Billy Bible if your only model for ministry and faithfulness is the showdown with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Or the only Jesus you really like is Jesus flipping over tables in the temple. And you always go back and say, well, Elijah was sarcastic. Yes, that's one example, but read the rest of the Bible. 4, you might be a Billy Bible if you're incapable of seeing difference and you never believe in qualifying statements. It's all black and white with you. A pastor years ago, reaching the end of his pastoral ministry, said, "The longer that I've been doing this, the more that the bad things seem bad, the good things seem good, and the more I see there's a lot of gray in between." Well, there's probably some wisdom there somewhere in all of that. 5, you might be a Billy Bible if you never give the benefit of the doubt. You never try to read arguments in context. You put the worst possible construct on other people's motives and the meaning of their words. Number 6, you might be a Billy Bible if you have no unmentioned opinions. In other words, do people know what you think about everything? My friends, they shouldn't. It's why you have prayer, or perhaps a journal or a dog. Seven, you might be a Billy Bible if you're unable to sympathize with your opponents. Do you ever see whether it's your theological opponents or the family member you just can't get along with or the person you feel like is making your life difficult? Do you ever sympathize? Do you ever acknowledge, I understand where they're coming from? I really do. I understand where they're coming from. Even if I land in a different place. You might be a Billy Bible if your first instinct is to criticize and your last instinct is to encourage. Number 9, you might be a Billy Bible or a quarrelsome person if you have this small grid and everything fits in it. What I mean, you view life through this very small prism such that everything you see is about that. You probably met people like that. Everything is about social justice or the way we worship, or everything is about you, or everything is about my parents messed up my life. Everything is Obama's fault. Everything is about Trump. Everything is about the one thing that I've already decided everything is about. When all you have is a hammer, the rest of the world looks like a nail. Number 10, you might be a Billy Bible if you derive a sense of satisfaction and spiritual safety in feeling constantly rejected. Now, this is a fine line here, I know, not blaming the victim. What I mean is some people can be constitutionally unable to be in any position except as the remnant. They're really wary of anything going well. They assume that if a lot of people are into it, it's got to be bad. And I can only listen to the most independent of the independent artists. Everything else is wrong. And if everyone else is into this theology, all those, then I can be into this over here. I can only be operating, being in the remnant, being the last. Because everyone else, has bowed the knee to Baal except me. And we like that feeling. That if God didn't have me down here, the whole world would just go to pot. Eleven, you might be a Billy Bible kind of person if you're always in the trenches with hand grenades strapped to your chest. Never in the cafeteria with ice cream and ping pong. And I know life is a battle, and we're in a spiritual war. There's an illustration given of a young man had arrived home from the war in Iraq. And the pastor asked him what he did. What was his job? Was it dangerous? He said, yes, it's been really dangerous. Then the pastor said, well, what is it? What was your job? And the young soldier, he was kind of sheepish about it, and he said, well, I'm part of the convoy for the ice cream truck. And he said, we have bombs and mines and people all along the road driving up from Kuwait into Iraq because they need ice cream. The soldiers in the cafeteria need ice cream. And the pastor said, God bless you. Yes, they do need ice cream. And someone has to protect the ice cream coming up. And the pastor didn't make light of his service. It was very brave, he said. Even in a war, you eat ice cream. Are you tracking with me? Some of us only know ice cream. Others of us only know hand grenades. Everything, all the time, it's always DEFCON whatever, 6. Red alert or whatever the highest alert color is. It's always amped up to 11. It's always that all the time. Number 12, and you could say, I'll be glad when this is over. Number 12, you might be a Billy Bible kind of person if you have never changed your mind. You have never changed your mind on an important matter. Since the Eisenhower administration. And so what they're saying is, I've had it all right since back in those days. I've never had anything wrong in my life. Nothing has come to you to change your mind. Quarrelsome people are set in their ways. You think, well, man, what in the world does this have to do with Jesus? Jesus is our example. He didn't live some lily-livered life, safe life. He had plenty of conflict. But he was never in it for the love of fighting, but for the love of his Father. He didn't meddle in other people's business, but he was long-suffering as everyone wanted to meddle into his. He overlooked countless sins, and he refused to deal with stubborn and hard-hearted people. So surely we can see in him the personification of wisdom. Wisdom incarnate in the Lord Jesus. He's our example. But more than that, he's our power. Christ in us, the hope of glory on this Sunday morning. The very Spirit of Christ had worked within us to pursue the peace you think is impossible. To lay down the weapons of warfare that you've been holding on to for years or for a lifetime. He provides us with the power in the inner person to be strengthened by faith and the working of the Holy Spirit, to be wise and not to be a fool. Most importantly, he's not only our example and our power, but he is our provision. Was not the death of our Lord all about the resolution of conflict? As you know, he is, after all, called what? The Prince of Peace. If your whole life is nothing but accusations and allegations, who is your Father? But the one who is called the accuser of the brethren. But if your life is marked by sowing seeds of unity, harmony, peace, might you not be following the Prince of Peace? Not a peace as the world would have it, that just says none of these things matter and we just go along to get along. That's not true peace. We have peace because He made peace through the shedding of His blood on the cross. Peace with God and peace with those in the family of God. Brothers and sisters, this is especially for us who belong to the household of faith. Yes, we want to pursue honorable peace even with those who aren't Christians, but in particular in the household of God, in the church of Jesus Christ. We should not live at odds with those who have been made right with God. They have been brought in. We have been brought near. We are brothers. We are sisters. We are part of the same family. We have our older brother, the Lord Jesus Christ. We have our Heavenly Father. We have the Holy Spirit to do with and through us more than we can ask or imagine. Well, Lord bless you. Let's bow for prayer.